Hi everyone, it's Chenso from Reality Art Pod, here to talk about the season finale of the Challenge All-Stars 5, Rivals, titled An Unrivaled Twist. Last week on the challenge, players started TJ's final with checkpoints where they started collecting stars, and Devon and Shane took the lead in the battle for the win. Before I dive in, I put a link in the description to my playlist, where you can catch up on my previous recaps. If you like the content, consider liking and subscribing, and you could use my link to try Paramount Plus for free and binge tons of Challenge and Challenge All-Stars. But let's dive into it. Our final four teams show up to checkpoint 5 at night and eating challenge. They'll be playing Pho King Trivia. They'll be answering trivia questions about each other. If they get one right, they can choose one of their ingredients to pour in someone else's pho, and if they're wrong, they need to put it in their own. The ingredients are blended snails, chili peppers, and worms, and in the end, they'll race to drink their pho.
I hate this drink.
They get started. Shane gives Nicole and Melissa a drink, which leads to a vicious back and forth between these two teams. But nobody's going after Frank and Sam, who are also getting all of their questions right and passing out drinks. They then have to chug their pho concoction. Steve tells us he used to be a competitive eater, so he's guzzling. Adam and Steve finished first, getting 4 stars, followed by Frank and Sam, Devon and Shane, and Melissa and Nicole, who do not like this drink. They then have to sleep on the floor and head to their next checkpoint the next day. Adam tells us he wants to use the money to propose to Avery. That's nice. And Devon wants to use the money to be a stay-at-home mom and be there with Cadence. That's also nice. In this checkpoint, they have to run to the boats from season 40 and paddle to TJ. They get started. Steve quickly pulls a muscle, but is trooping for Adam. Nicole and Melissa are having communication issues. Shocker. Frank tells us Adam and Steve have bad strategy for going out of the way. Frank and Sam finish first, followed by Adam and Steve, Nicole and Melissa, and Devon and Shane in last. Sam reveals that apparently she has an injury from the day before, but she still wants Frank to drag her to the finish line. In the next checkpoint, they need to use bowls on their shoulders to transport water from the lake into their tube to fill it to the line. They get started. Shane and Devon are working well together here, but Sam has a hurt knee and is out of breath. Frank is taking Sam up on her offer to drag her to the finish line. In confessional, Frank tells us he did a full orthopedic evaluation of Sam before the challenge, and nothing is wrong with her, basically saying she's playing it all up as an excuse. In a photo finish for first, Shane and Devon come first, followed by Adam and Steve, and Melissa and Nicole, Frank and Sam all time out, getting no stars, causing a lot of frustration from the latter two. Rightfully so, this was a lot of work to get nothing. Frank loses his temper a bit on Sam. He's frustrated about the excuses, but the other players support Sam, and Frank and Sam have an emotional, honest moment where Frank is trying to motivate Sam to get her head in the game. They head to the final checkpoint. At this point, the players are carrying Sam to the challenge. They're playing Balance Them All. They have 20 bags of different weights. They need to balance out the weights and themselves. They get started with Devon and Shane and Adam and Steve, mathematically the only two teams that have a chance of winning the season. It's another photo finish between Adam and Steve and Shane and Devon, followed by Frank and Sam, then Melissa and Nicole. TJ announces the final results, and I'll talk about these players after all the goings on here. But in fourth place, winning $5,000 are Melissa and Nicole. In third, winning $10,000, Frank and Sam. Shane and Devon are the runners-up, winning $35,000, and the winners are Adam and Steve, who are offered a dilemma where they need to privately answer if they think their partner would split or steal the money. If they both say split, they'll split it, and if they don't have the same answer, they'll have a playoff competition. Was this the unrivaled twist the episode title hinted to? The same old dusty thing we've done before and we're fully expecting? It doesn't even matter. They both choose to split and win the $250,000, and the episode ends with Adam proposing in confessional to Avery, saying he'll be on a knee next to her as they watch it on TV. That's nice. So let's talk about these players. In fourth place, I'll start with Melissa, who's always such a delight in my opinion. It's always a yes for me, dog, to have her on a cast, though this season she seemed a bit more mature, either from really growing up and mothering in the real world or being around a more mature cast. She was still unafraid to make good TV and have explosive moments, even hooking up on camera, definitely pulling her weight in the reality TV-ness of it all. But her entire story this season had to do with her partnership with Nicole, who I'll talk about. I've never been a big Nicole fan. I mean, I'm still not really, but this season was probably the most tolerable she's been, not as obnoxious, and I'm surprised that I feel that way since she was doing a greatest hits here, having a girlfriend back home and cheating on her, but saying she loves her, then FaceTiming her girlfriend with Melissa, which was wild. I figured maybe they have an open relationship, but from what I've heard the other players say, I think Nicole is cooked, especially after the GoPro in bed scene. In their goodbyes, Nicole says she sees Melissa as a sister, which is crazy to say about someone you just I like the drama from her this season, and I think it's funny that she's seriously such a cheater, like for life, but it did seem like she cared about her girlfriend. I'd say I'm interested to see what happens with that, but I'm not. In third, we have Frank and Sam, starting with Frank, who came back from a long hiatus, with two main storylines this season. The first being him as a player, making and breaking deals, teaming up with Veronica to be part of the they that would cause a lot of drama. The show portrayed him as a villain, but I quite enjoyed his gameplay and confidence. He has a Miss I Know I'm Fine kind of attitude that's pretty admirable. Even if he's not in the right, he's usually right in his way of thinking, he got into it with Shane, and he won every tussle there, but more on that later. The main storyline on theme of the season is his partnership with Sam, with him having screamed and pushed her in the final of Battle of the Seasons. The show kind of set him up here a bit. He knew he had to be super patient or he would look bad, but also Sam isn't a physical player, and it was a bit of a recipe for disaster. They weren't a disaster though. They worked really well together and are a good team. In the end, they make it to the final, and he says that he lost his temper, but I found his reaction to the situation understandable, given that he wanted to win, but his partner wasn't living up to what he felt was their potential, which is arguably very frustrating. He should return to the main show because I'd love to see how he does with different partners in present day, and he's a great competitor. And his partner Sam, who I was excited to see return, as I feel she's so unique as a character and offers a different point of view. A lot we saw from Sam was her reaction to things Frank was doing. I found it admirable that she was dedicated to Frank and offered to push herself to the limit for him. But the bigger story was this journey for her as an individual, talking to Anissa about representing different body types and dealing with challenges of her limitations. She shared that she wanted to win the money to pay for her top surgery. Her willingness to try and share with us makes Sam a great TV character, and I would like to see her again. She thinks she's not a good competitor, but statistically, her numbers probably put her in the upper level for challengers, being undefeated in eliminations, a two-time finalist and champion. Like I said, I'd like to see more from Sam. Next, our runner-ups, starting with Shane, whose storylines this season were all about drama, with him having big beef with Frank at nearly every turn, even trying to one-up Frank and taking care of Veronica's foot with random techniques that just made him look foolish. It often was giving jealousy with Frank. His rivalry with Devon continued throughout. They had different friends, which worked for their social game, but he made things dicey for them when it was time to pick a side, which culminated in his big blow up at the challenge that made her cry. Then he threatened to quit multiple times. She didn't even bat an eye at that. She knew he was playing. The biggest thing that bothers me about Shane is the way that he fights with women. It gets under my skin. He and Devon make it to the final and work well together, but Shane made several silly decisions throughout this final, like throwing their ball at Frank and Sam in the stacking challenge instead of Adam and Steve, and putting their drink in Nicole and Melissa's pho in the eating challenge, decisions that ultimately made it his fault that they didn't win the show. And Devon, who was generous to the fans to make a return here for All Stars, and it ended up being a great season for her. She was able to show her growth over the years, showing she has a bit more control over when to be reactive. I think she's a bit hard on herself because the things she wants to change about herself are things that people like about her. And when she does end up being reactive this season with Shane, she seems to regret it, even though she was in the right and it was entertaining. In what she says is her final season, she performs well in challenges and ends up having her best season ever on any show, never facing elimination, winning a daily, and not only making it to the final, but being a runner-up by a few seconds. She has a bright future ahead. She's hosting the Challenge podcast and doing a great job at that. And if she's not on one of the next 2 seasons of Traders, I will eat spicy pho. And our winners, starting with Steve, who came into the season with the most active rivalry with Adam, having just turned on him in the last All-Stars. I'd assumed they'd worked it out between seasons, but nope, their rivalry was quite active coming in. And I also assumed they'd worked it out along the way, but again, no. In one of the final episodes, Adam tries to have the talk with Steve to resolve it, but they never even sit down to have that conversation. Steve doesn't seem down for it. And my take from what we saw is that Steve seemed pretty antisocial in the house, letting Adam do all the game talk and socializing, as he was never around for the house events. For the most part, I don't think the show really knows what to do with Steve, besides throw in some confessionals about his hands. He comes alive when it's time to compete, proving to not just be good physically, but he and Adam are really good at everything, including random things, which makes them pretty unstoppable together. Which brings me to Adam, whose return to the show has been quite a ride. He returns after a long break for season 4, does really well only to be undone by Steve, but at least he met Avery. And I retain, this season would have been a lot better had Avery been on the cast with Tony as a partner. But back to Adam, he and Steve are big targets from the start, winning a star then being sent into 4 eliminations in a row. But they start winning dailies, and for some reason greatly benefited from the underdog alliance coming to form. The other players lost sight of this team being the biggest threat to win. They really should have kept taking shots at them. Nani was right about that. Adam carried this team's social game, and he gave so many funny, silly moments, and ties a bow on what will probably be his capstone season with a win and a televised proposal. At the time I recorded this, I see no posts from either of them on social media since this aired, and I'm on the edge of my seat of how this was received. Bring them both back to the main show. And that wraps up a season that was carried by a stacked cast. When I saw this cast, and that they were switching to MTV, I thought we were about to get a huge upgrade to the show. Now that I've seen the final product, at this point I think we can put the whole All-Stars concept in the past. This could have been just branded as season 41 of the show. Give us 2 seasons of the main show a year, one that's bigger, one that's smaller. There's really no need to have an All-Stars when you have the same people coming on both shows. There were a lot of production issues here. Firstly, the gender imbalance of having some co-ed teams, some guy teams, some girl teams just doesn't work unless you put thought and care into the challenges being equitable. There were some challenges this season that you just couldn't win if you weren't tall, which greatly benefited the men. There were times when Katie and Veronica couldn't win just because they were short. I also think it was cheap and lazy that they filmed this in the same location as season 40 and reused a lot of mechanics and locations from that season season, even using the boats from the premiere of 40 for the final here, and expecting us not to notice because it's daytime, not night. We are not stupid. They even reused challenges from this season, doing the same barrel challenge in the final as they did it in elimination, which again felt cheap and lazy. But this was still an entertaining season and proved that they could fit everything we need to see into 60 minutes. The pacing of these episodes was perfect. The main show can learn from them. The main show can drag on a bit for the sake of filling the 90 minutes. And as I said earlier, this cast was full of people who knew how to make good TV. But that's all to say about this episode and this season. Thank you to everyone old and new who tuned into my recaps. If you like the video, consider liking and subscribing. My next challenge video will be a season 41 cast reaction, and I'll be recapping season 41 as well. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Until next time, you know where to find me. Bye.